This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Heath Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Oh, we're back. Podcasting is one of my favorite things to do. I always look forward to our conversations, Kristen.
Same.
You know, when we started this, we were reading books, and I came to you with a big book. I believe it was called Eat Right to Die.
How Not to Die.
Yeah, right. And you looked at me and went, it's too big.
And now we're reading big books all the time.
I've gotten her converted. She's actually reading big books with me. And
I like big books.
Then I cannot lie.
I can't. Oh, okay.
The other readers can't deny.
Soundtrack. All right. So this book is nothing if it sits on the shelf, which was my point to you. You know, books don't do anything if you don't open them and see what's inside them. And so we have an author that is saying this in his book. This book is nothing if it sits on the shelf. Nothing. But this is something really powerful in the hands of a reader. And if you felt that power, share it with others. Discuss it, recommend it, share a copy, gift it, send them to the library, post your favorite piece of knowledge on social media. We can all do our part to promote the consciousness of what we're reading. And
sums up what we're doing at Health Geeks.
I sort of felt like that is kind of what's compelled us. It's like we're going to open the book and be empowered by whatever's in there and discuss it and share it. And we want you all to do that with us. And so we have a book list, and you'll find it on our Facebook, Health Geeks Book Club podcast Facebook page. Any place else they can
and
find
the
it?
healthgeekspodcast.com.
Yes, there we go.
For our bookstore.
Yes. And that makes it so much easier for you to get the book. If you just, you hear it and go get it and read it, and then you can comment, call us, talk to us, and share it with your friends.
That's right.
336-422-6862. 336-422-6862.
That was Tim. Hi, Tim.
Encouraging you to leave us a message. Yes. So we are talking about Fiber Fueled, the plant-based gut health program for losing weight, restoring your health, and optimizing your microbiome by Will Bulsiewicz, who goes by Dr. B, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. And on the back cover, you got all sorts of crazy people like David Sinclair writing a go for. This book is packed with sensible advice on how to thrive in our overfed world. There's some really good references of other authors in this area.
Are you ready to take control of your health and wellness journey, but don't want to do it alone? Look no further than Well Balanced Nutrition. We offer personalized nutrition and wellness coaching tailored to your unique needs. Our integrative, whole-person approach combines the latest evidence-based practices with compassionate guidance. Whether you're managing health concerns or seeking to optimize your well-being, take the first step towards a healthier, happier you by booking a free 15-minute consult with one of our registered dietitians at wellbalancednutrition.com. Okay, so yes, thankfully he goes by Dr. B.
Because I can't say that.
We'll be referring to him as Dr. B. I believe I'm the one that brought this book to our attention. Mm-hmm. I first started with his cookbook, actually. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
We read Fiber Fueled, his first book, but he also has a really beautiful cookbook.
It looks like you've used it a lot. It's got some flip marks.
Yeah, It's inspired me. And it has even more information. He has like step-by-step plans if you have a specific gut health problem that he walks you through. So when I discovered Dr. B, he's on social media. He's got some online classes.
Yes, he does.
I think what compels or pulls me towards him is that he has a knack for just using pretty normal language to describe complicated things.
Well, that's interesting because he's highly educated. He went to Georgetown University School of Medicine. He was the chief medical resident at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and he was the chief gastroenterology fellow at our UNC Chapel Hill here in North Carolina. He's well educated.
Right. He's an MD. So we've read other gut health books that were not necessarily by medical doctors trained in GI. So I think that gives him a leg up in my book.
And then he's also published by Penguin Random House, which is another wonderful company. And this book was published in 2020, so it's pretty recent. But Avery, the imprint of Penguin Random House, has also published another couple of books that we've read, Atomic Habits and Unwinding Anxiety. So we like this publisher. They say that they're publishing nonfiction that doesn't just change conversation, it changes lives. And I think this book is in that category.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think this might be the third medical doctor author that we've read that recommends plant-based. Mm-hmm. So it was another hormone book that we read that was encouraging plant-based.
Plant Slant is, the Blue Zones, definitely.
Blue Zones. There's a couple others. The book that we haven't read, but that you wanted me to read, How Not to Diet, by Dr. Greger. He is a plant-based
We might read that
physician.
One still. The End of Food Allergy was one.
No, it wasn't that. But anyway, it's just interesting to me when these doctors go through their training and then kind of, whether it's their own experience or the family member experience kind of life-changing events through nutrition, they kind of go, oh my gosh, there's so much to this. And maybe the more doctors that experience that, the more we can move towards nutrition is more of medicine than.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And lifestyle.
Yeah.
Those two. Was it the microbiome book that we read?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of focus now on understanding how important the bacteria and fungus and archaea, all these little critters that are part of our ecosystem as a human body, that I don't think we knew a long time ago. And so now we do know about it, and it's important. And so feeding that microbiome begins to be an interesting conversation, because they're the things that are doing things for us that we can't do, that our human cells are not programmed to do. So we need to be in synthesis with these bacteria in particular. Kristen, one of the fun things that I picked up in here was the idea of gut fitness. We talk about physical fitness, and we've talked about how important exercise is in our wellness. He's using it as gut fitness. And I thought, what are you talking about? We go to the gym, we work out our muscles, we lift our weights, we do our aerobics, we do our stability. He's saying, you got to work out your gut. Mm-hmm. And actually, our gut is a muscle. It's smooth muscle.
That's right.
Yeah. So in a way, I thought, oh, he's on to something here. And we don't pay attention to smooth muscle. Our heart is cardiac muscle, but all these tubes in our GI system are smooth muscle, and they're very important the way they're coordinated. So how does he say we should work out at every meal? And one of the things that I think he was saying would be fun for us to try to do, and I actually did it, do you eat 30 different kinds of plants a week? And I started saying, God, I don't do that. Well, I think I ate 30 in one day. It surprised me at the variety, because when you start counting the nuts, as well as the leafy greens and the root vegetables and the fruits, pretty soon you're eating more than you know you're eating.
Yeah,
and I was proud of myself. I went, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
I actually, on the way here into the studio, I'm like, I need to just track my variety. And he does encourage you to do that.
Does he call them points? Like plant points?
Rack up your plant points.
Yeah, rack up your plant points. So he does have a program. A program in this book, and it's a 4-week program, and it's at the end of the book. He talks about knowledge being power, and the fiber-fueled approach, and then the fiber-fueled plan. So he does divide his book into 3 parts. It makes it easy to read that way, because you can jump to the part you want to. But I would suggest reading the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and just to point out, to drive it home, so he says the golden rule for working out your gut is having a diversity of plants every day.
Diversity.
So that's the number one thing that we can do. And it goes back to fiber oftentimes. And also he goes into probiotics.
Mm-hmm. And prebiotics.
And prebiotics.
And postbiotics.
And postbiotics.
Yeah.
So, and then
Can I just say something as an ecologist?
Sure.
I was trained as an ecologist, and one of the founding principles in ecology is diversity equals stability. The more diverse a community is, the easier it is to withstand the upsets, the catastrophes, and things like that. So that makes perfect sense to me. Being, a community of microbes in there, the more diversity, probably the healthier it is. And so the more diverse, he's saying what you put in your mouth is bringing some of those microbes in.
Exactly. And
feeding them.
There's some things that are killing off some of the good.
The ones that are making postbiotics that we need.
Right.
Versus postbiotics that toxins.
So whatever you feed your gut, it will grow more of. And he points out two major things that are causing gut dysbiosis, or, that lack of diversity and more of the harmful bacteria in our gut.
Yeah, dysbiosis means a disruption in the balance of that community.
Exactly. Thank you. And then, so number one is basically the standard American diet, right? High fat, high sugar. These things just kind of feed those bad bugs that we don't want and then make those populate a little bit more. And then the other thing he calls out are fad diets. So he really calls out like the keto approach, even paleo, and as a GI doc, he probably sees this a lot. People coming and like taking everything out of their diet because there's some advice about
eliminate, yeah, get rid of it. Don't ever eat it again.
And so they're just in a pinhole of what they can eat, and they come to him and like, I don't know what to do, and I'm still experiencing gut issues. And I mean, how wonderful, because he was like, don't worry about it. We're going to add everything back in. And his goal is to get that variety back so you can enjoy as much of those foods as possible. He teaches you how to train your gut to be able to do that.
Yeah, and remember that book on the end of food allergy? Because he does talk about something like 20% of Americans have a food intolerance, which is a lot of people. But that food allergy book was hopeful, too, in the fact that we can maybe reintroduce these things, but it's a process. You can't just have a peanut if you have an intolerance to it. That's not good.
Well, yes. And he does point out the major difference between food allergies and food sensitivities and intolerances. And I think for that reason alone, that's important. This book is important to read because I think most people are very confused between those three things. They'll call a food sensitivity like they'll say,
intolerance. Yeah.
I don't do well with gluten, for instance.
Yeah.
They'll say that, and then they're like, I'm allergic to gluten.
Yeah.
No, you're not, unless you have celiac disease, which is
avoid it.
Avoid it. And he calls out gluten quite a bit in here. That you're probably avoiding it, and you shouldn't be if you don't have celiac and you don't have the symptoms and you've ruled that out, then stop.
Yeah, but moderation.
Gluten,
yeah, it's the overindulgence of the gluten-containing foods that might be your problem.
Well, I'd say the overindulgence of anything is not good for you.
That is true.
Moderation is always the key.
That's what they say. You were talking about paleo and keto. I just kind of wanted to dig in there just a little bit because he says with the keto diet, you're really making a shift in your microbiome. And within 24 hours, it's a quick response to going pure keto, and that maybe that's not a good idea because you get those imbalances.
Yeah, you think about keto; it's usually higher in saturated fat. You're removing almost all carbohydrates, and that's where you get your fiber from.
So you could be fiber deficient, maybe.
You're not feeding your gut; it's not getting the prebiotics. So the probiotics, the gut bugs might die off, and then you're not getting, he goes into saturated fatty acids, which is what your happy gut bugs will produce for you.
Yeah. He talks about paleo similarly. He says it's associated with an increase in this chemical called TMAO that we'll talk about a little bit more. It's not a good thing. When it goes up, you have some problems. And that decreases.
Is that talking my ass off?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I like that.
No. That's not what it means.
Stands for. Clever, though.
Yeah. And it leads towards disease status, really. And so he is not a fan of that. And maybe some other things about the pharmaceuticals we take can be influencing these microbes in our body. And one that I had not heard of, he's concerned a little bit about oral contraceptives being associated with an increase in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And I have many people in my circle of contacts that struggle with that. And we're in the age when the oral contraceptives were,
pretty common.
introduced, and they were introduced in higher quantities of estrogen, progesterone, and stuff like that than they are now. But I thought that's worth pursuing a little bit to see if you're a woman who's having these GI upsets, maybe it's related to some of these pharmaceuticals that you're on.
Now, I agree with...
Although pregnancy can be difficult, too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, just to come back to paleo, though, I definitely agree with keto. Paleo, I mean, I can see some helpful benefits of that, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I have helped clients on it, and it's been helpful. And we even read another book, if you can recall, I think Healthy Gut, Healthy You by Dr. Ruscio, who is a big component of paleo. And now, I think he did say, restrict in this way and then add back in as well. So he's not saying paleo for life, I don't think. But
yeah, I'm going to come back to him in a little bit more because I have some other things about that.
So anyway, I just wanted to point out that conflicting piece there.
Yeah. There's some statistics. I mentioned the one about food intolerance, but this other thing about the average American eats 23 pounds of pizza, 24 pounds of artificial sweeteners a year, 29 pounds of French fries, 31 pounds of cheese, 220 pounds of meat, 52 pounds of sugar, 120 pounds of grains, and 3 pounds of salt a year.
And it's no wonder we're not getting enough fiber.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you spread that over 365 days, 3 meals a day. I don't know, but that is quantities, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought, how did they figure that one out?
I think he, when I followed him on Instagram, I thought he was pretty good at not causing food fear. And then I read this book, and I'm like, oh, he's kind of bringing out the food fear a little bit, and the fear factors, and the those big figures to try to stun us into change, which I have mixed feelings about.
Oh yeah, Joy Choice taught us that. It's like if you're doing it because you should, or it puts a cognitive dissonance in there, and you end up wanting to do it more.
It's the wrong way to motivate yourself.
Right. He also talks about, in that same area, 80% of disease risk is determined by environment and lifetime exposure. So I think that I do agree with that, and I think that's one of the reasons you and I like digging into this literature, because we feel like if we're better informed and build lifestyles and routines around our daily activities that make a healthy lifestyle easier, we may have a better health outcome as we age. So we can enjoy life. I mean, you only get one, right?
That's right. And if we can do things that will help us live longer and enjoy a healthier life.
That aren't so, isolating and separating us from each other and that kind of thing. But I want to, at some point, talk about short-chain fatty acids. So whenever you're ready, let me know.
What'd you call me?
SCFA.
Yeah, I brought those up earlier. I brought those up earlier, so come on.
Oh, okay. I think that's pretty interesting because it looks like the microbiomes are working on this fiber that we take in, and it's producing this thing called a short-chain fatty acid. Now, fatty acids hook together with some other things to make a triglyceride, right? And so we worry about those in our bloodstream, and there are 3 glycerides attached to those.
So how could these short-chain fatty acids possibly be good to have in our gut? What do they do
Well,
for
he
us?
says there's multiple effects that they have. There are 3 kinds of them. There's acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And we ran into the butyrate and butyric acid in our conversations about the nosedive, as well as a book that we read about flavor. There's something about that molecule that our bodies are responding to. But it turns out that these short-chain fatty acids make your colon a little more acidic. And by doing that, they suppress some of these negative microbes like E. coli and other pathogens. So they're inhibiting that. But there was a craze for a while, and maybe it still is, where they're saying we need to eat alkaline. We need everything to be alkaline. Don't be acidic. Well, here, there's a benefit to a little bit of an acid in your colon. So these short-chain fatty acids are providing that. They also, by doing that suppression, they're suppressing inflammation, which we know is from my favorite local author, Ski Chilton. He wrote a pivotal book called Inflammation Nation, talking about we're treating so many things at the symptom level rather than at the root cause, which is inflammation. And if we can modulate down our cellular inflammation processes, we might do better. And then he says that the short-chain fatty acids help lower the cholesterol, and it increases our satiety hormones so that we feel full. So these are good things that are coming out of our fiber.
Absolutely.
And our cells don't tend to be able to make those short-chain fatty acids. The microbes are doing it for us, which is that postbiotic benefit that we're getting. Because you have a prebiotic, which is the food you would bring in to feed the microbes. So that'd be the substrate. Then you got the microorganisms working on it, and they make a health benefit or a health, so that's why that dysbiosis is a bad idea. You want a healthy gut microbiome. If you don't, you might end up with a leaky gut, and these things also, that inflammation leads to disruption in the junctions between the lining of our GI tract and allows things to move across barriers that shouldn't happen, and then we have problems. Leaky gut syndrome is not happy.
Yeah, he does a good job of explaining all of that, and that's kind of in the first part. Mm-hmm. And in the second part, if we're ready to jump into that.
Mm-hmm. What's the second part of the book about?
The second part is really, what to do. Let me see.
Eat the rainbow.
Oh, wait. There's 3 parts. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Eat the rainbow. Finding your
Taste
plant
the
passion.
rainbow.
Fermentation nation rising.
The part 2 is the fiber-fueled approach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then part 3 is the plan. So he's telling us what we can do. He goes into the power of whole grains.
Yes.
And
and a lot of people say, don't eat bread, but if you're going to eat bread, eat whole grain.
that's right. And he also points out that rye is another great option, and sourdough. That is so trendy right now.
Oh, I'm on that one. I went out and bought the cast iron thing to make it in, and I've made 2 loaves. And I was going to make a loaf yesterday, and then my timing got all twerped out. But I'm really excited about that. And I love it because I didn't realize the microbes in the sourdough are breaking down the gluten. So they say there's really little gluten left in the bread.
Yeah, and that's what he says. That most people can tolerate it, even if you can't tolerate most other breads.
Yeah, and so then there's the idea, and I don't know if it's in your recipe book or not, but I posted a picture of a slab of sourdough toasted with pinto beans on it and little peppers for a breakfast. Oh, God, it looks so good. I can't wait to have that. And it's weird because I grew up eating bacon and eggs.
Can you teach me how to make sourdough someday?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll give you a starter because I got it from Anna Gianoski, the Flower Yard, North Carolina gal.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. She's my mentor in that process. Hey, if you're as interested in prevention as I am, contact me, Eleanor Russell, at 360health, 4u.com. Whether you're interested in financial wellness or physical health products, 360 Health invites you to become part of our community.
Well, you mentioned something else that he's big on promoting, and that's legumes. So he talks all about beans. And I don't remember what year it was, but I went to a dietetics conference, and they have these booths. And, there's someone who promotes blueberries, and there's someone who promotes legumes. So there's all these representations. There's brands there. But it's
like an exhibit hall?
It's like an exhibit hall, yeah. And I got this little half-cup measurement from the legumes.org or whatever, and it's the half cup a day. Like, can you at least eat a half a cup of beans every day? Like, how simple is that? Mm-hmm. But he probably wants you to eat more.
I like it. I'm on it.
So, yep, he talks about legumes. He breaks the myth about lectins. He goes into that.
Oh, there's Dr. Grundy on the feeds always talking about don't eat lectins. They're all, you can't have beans or nightshades. They're poison.
Yeah, I have a friend who's, I'm not saying she can't, but she says that she can't have nightshades. And I'm like, what does that mean? She goes, and she started naming all this stuff. I'm like, oh, that sucks for you.
Mm-hmm. I always heard that if you cook it, it breaks the lectins down anyway.
Yeah, he says that similar to studies on gluten, we need to confirm the findings in human populations because the ones that he refers to, the Dr. Gundy, is in animals. Are there in animals? And so otherwise, we run the risk of finding some pretty quacky things that mislead us and in some cases can harm us. So what do we find when we study legumes and whole grains in human populations? Well, you probably already know. Weight loss, lower blood pressure and lower cholesterol.
Sounds good.
Reversal of insulin resistance, less inflammation, a shift in the microbiome to produce more of those short-chain fatty acids, protection from cardiovascular disease and cancer, longer life expectancy.
I want it.
Study after study has shown us that legumes and whole grains are absolutely vital to your health and your gut's health. So I'm happy about that because I love beans and whole grains.
Me too. Do you eat barley?
Not often.
I used to have it in Campbell's vegetable soup and wondered what it was, and it was barley. And that's the only time I ever really remember it being served to me. But I have bought some, but I don't know what to do with it.
Barley and beef stew is what
that what you
always
do?
comes to mind, yeah.
Well, maybe we'll check out his recipe book at some point.
Yeah.
We'll post that on the social media
How do you
stuff.
feel about farro?
I love it. It's higher in protein, too, which is kind of a plus. It's also a little bit higher in calorie, but that's okay. And it's a good... So just with Dr. B's advice, you diversify your plants. So we get kind of stuck in a rut pretty easily, right? Like rice, broccoli, chicken. So try the different grains. Try the barley. Try the farro.
It's fun.
It is
We were talking about our
fun.
kitchens one day together recently, and how much fun we can have in our kitchen being home cooks. Experimenting with these things. And I think I told you guys I tried the California rolls, which I can't wait to do again. But it was a seaweed, that's not typically found in my kitchen. I had to go hunt for that. And he's talking about seaweed rocks, fiber content that is 50 to 85% soluble prebiotic. So, yeah, we can grind up a little seaweed and put on our soups or just to flavor these wonderful dishes that we're preparing. What about the white potato? It gets a bad rap, and he talks about it's actually an excellent source of resistant starch. That's right, white potatoes. French fries and potato chips are obviously bad, but my Irish microbes love a good potato mash. They're a great source of prebiotic resistant starch. And one of the things he talks about is you let your potatoes cool. The process of cooling creates more resistant starch. If you heat and cool repeatedly, you keep tuning it up. Leftover mashed potatoes rocks. So that idea of leftovers, a lot of people don't like leftovers, but he's saying in this case, the leftover recooking is actually improving the nutritional benefit to your microbes.
That's a food fun fact, isn't it?
And white potatoes are like, you got to eat sweet potatoes all the time. Well, I like white potatoes. I grew up on them.
Same. My daughter likes them more than sweet potatoes, so we've kind of shifted from having sweet potatoes all the time to more white. And the other day at the dinner table, my in-laws were kind of like, well, no, sweet potatoes are healthier. And I look at Allie and I go, not really. It just kind of depends on how you compare them.
We need both.
They're both have benefits, and they're pretty similar if you really look at the nutrition facts next to them.
But I hate sweet potatoes.
And then in the car, I was listening to this, and he goes over the white potato part, and Allie's in the back, and I say, see, Allie, your white potatoes are awesome, aren't they? And she goes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But that idea of diversity, so not just only white potatoes, mix it in with some the rice or the
Farro.
or the white potato,
Yeah.
sweet potatoes, mix them up. Need 30 plants a week. See if you can do it. I'm all for that.
So here's my issue is that he says if you're just focusing on plants, and he wants you to go fully plant-based, you don't have to worry about your macronutrients, whether you're getting enough of this and that. You just worry about eating a variety of plants. And I'm like, maybe it's important to think about those things a little bit. And I know plant-based eaters get tired of this all the time, but you do have to be smart about your protein. You do have to figure out where you're getting your B12 from. You have to be wise about iron. There are things that you need to consider that I don't think he gives enough
I agree.
information on.
You were talking about meat. We read a book about flavor not too long ago. And in there, I learned something. I was telling you I try to learn something every day. So he was saying the flavor of meat, it doesn't come from that, what I would call adipose tissue, the fat, that you trim away from a slab of beef or whatever. It actually is coming from the cell membranes, the phospholipids in those cell membranes is what's giving it the flavor. And I thought, that's wild, because, we often think about having to have fat on the meat to get the flavor. But he says the flavor's really coming from the other. Now, that fat may do something on the receptors of your tongue and small intestine.
Does that include the marbling?
Yeah,
too?
yeah, because that's adipose tissue in there. But the cell membranes are a fat. They're phospholipids, and they're beautiful. They're so cool. But I thought, and they contain flavor? Whew, that's fun.
Well,
But you're talking about like the blackened, burnt parts of meat.
No. That Maillard reaction is another thing that brings in the browning flavors, but the meat flavors are coming from the phospholipid. And they did some tests to tease that all out and found that it was really the phospholipid is the flavor component.
Gotcha. Okay.
The fat's just fat.
Well, I asked because, he points out that, and it's true that is linked to cancer, the burnt parts of the meat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the other thing that was kind of fun about the flavor thing, which really is part of, when you're going to eat plants, they've got to taste good. And he talks about the way you prepare broccoli, you steam it. Mm-hmm. But there are other things that you don't, because you want to make, like rosemary, you want to get that flavor into the oil. So there are things that you want to bind to oil to hold flavor. And so we get into the conversations about oils too.
Well, I think that was in the flavor book that we read last time, right?
Yeah.
How to do that. And he doesn't
talk about flavor at all.
Doesn't really get into flavor or what tastes good or anything like that.
And I think that would help him. Like you got to like what you're eating.
Well, and I think maybe that's what inspired him to come out with a fiber-fueled cookbook.
Yeah.
He does partner with a dietitian.
Yes,
so
Amy,
good job, Dr. B.
What's her
Alexandra
name?
Caspero.
Yeah, give her
is
credit.
already on here. Some beautiful, beautiful recipes. So I think he was like, maybe he got some feedback like, well, that sounds great, but how do I actually have plant-based meals that taste awesome? And so he's like, here you go. And I will bring up now kind of my biggest qualm with plant-based eating is that it does take longer. It does take more culinary competence. It's not easy.
Now, come on, eating an apple doesn't require anything. You just bite it.
Well,
So that's raw food.
Well, that's the quick snack, but that's not a full meal.
That's
So
also boring.
No, it depends on their flavor experience, the context. So the idea that the whole food, and I went to some raw food cooking classes. There's a group of people that are just eating raw food.
Yep.
And I couldn't hang in there very long, but it was interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying these recipes aren't amazing. I'm just saying, as a busy person, I don't think that I'm going to be making all of these recipes in my own kitchen. Some of them are like, I'm going to have to try a couple of times even before I get them right. Because of my culinary competence. I love to be in the kitchen, but I wouldn't say I'm a chef by any means.
You're not. You're a home cook.
Yet.
You're a home cook.
So, for us who need more convenience options, I just find plant-based a little bit harder to hit the mark. And that's why I will always lean towards a more well-balanced concept where you're having a little bit of animal stuff that is more on the side. So kind of like the plant slant from
90% plants.
From Blue Zones, right? You're having mostly plants. And if you have meat,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a side item than the main dish, main component. Yeah.
And fishy fishes. They're good.
Fishes, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we
Sorry.
we are omnivores, and they do take to issue the carnivore and the omnivore and the vegan and the vegetarian. I mean, there's different eating patterns, and I think this author also comes down to individualism at some level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's pretty good at that.
Yeah, that it has to work for you, and maybe it doesn't work in the pure form initially. And that's why his plan, I think, is based on a process.
It's a process. It's he very much promotes trial and error and points out, even our individual gut microbiomes are so different that even if he recommends a prebiotic that typically works for some, it might not work for your gut. So until we are able to examine exactly what's inside your gut for an affordable price, then we have to do a lot of trial and error. And so he calls out the physiological differences that we have, but, we also know of the personality differences, the lifestyle differences, time, money, resources, that all matters. And I think he understands that for the most part.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's helpful. Back to the fiber conversation, though, which seems to be his thing, is we need more fiber. So that's why we have to eat all these plants, is to get the fiber.
Right.
And one of the myths that he tries to bust is that it just passes through your system. It's indigestible. And he says, no, we can't digest it, but those microbes are digesting it. And then how much do you need to eat? Well, we read that other book, Healthy Gut, Healthy You, and you mentioned Dr. Ruscio earlier. And I found these two authors somewhat at odds. And so when we read these books to our audience, this is one of the things we started out with is there's a glut of information out there about what you can do and should do and might do. And how do we make sense of it? Who do we believe and how do we navigate that? It's not easy.
No.
Both of these authors have referenced their material pretty substantially. I will say that I looked at the references in both of these books, and I was a little bit surprised to find most of their bibliography was 2008, 2000, nothing really current. But Kristen and I were talking about that, and maybe it's because the work is substantial and nobody's challenged it because it seems like you repeat it, you get the same results. And so we can go with that information. So I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, but I did notice it. I did find that the articles they were referencing were substantial, peer-reviewed types of work, and that gave me some confidence. But here in this Ruscio's book, The Fiber Conclusion, Do You Really Need to Feed Your Gut Bugs with Fiber? I mean, he addresses it right here, and he says, sorry to deprive you of the easy this is good, that is bad dichotomy, but fiber is not a black and white issue. What this all really boils down to is you should simply work through my plan to get the answer and be confident that where you end up will be where you're supposed to be. I'm thinking, I don't know.
Interesting. Well, that reminds me a couple of times in Dr. B's book, he reminds you that working with a healthcare provider is important. When you're adding fiber, he encourages you to go low and slow. So not jumping into something crazy, adding a little bit more fiber as you go. He also has the caveat, like if you have constipation or even diarrhea, do not jump into this fiber-fueled plan without first fixing that issue. And he says, see a healthcare provider to get help with that. So,
yeah, and he talks about the elimination diets that sometimes you will avoid whatever it is that's irritating that gut, causing the symptoms. But he says elimination is a short-term gain. It's not a long-term gain. So he doesn't advocate for eliminating long-term. He says you need more and more diversity long-term.
Right. Yeah, and so to be fair, so does Dr.
Yes,
B.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And in the cookbook section, like he has, or in the cookbook book, let me go to he has more information on ruling out the big 3 food sensitivities. He goes on about FODMAPs a little bit more in the cookbook.
Oh, he talks about them in here. Yeah.
And a little bit more in here is what I was saying.
Okay.
And then he talks about histamine intolerance in here and how to train your gut. So both of the books are great. But yeah, you want to talk about FODMAPs? What are FODMAPs? FODMAPs are carbohydrates that can...
Oligo, mono, di, polysaccharides.
Yeah, these big names of different kind of carbohydrates that...
I keep thinking you're cussing at me.
Are good. Are good for most of our guts.
They're fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And you don't need to memorize that.
No, but basically, if you have irritable bowel syndrome,
It's triggered by those things.
exactly. So a FODMAP diet, low FODMAP diet, is a short-term restriction or just eating less of those for a short time to kind of calm your gut down, and then you reintroduce.
And one of the
Very
benefits
strategically.
of reintroducing them is that the fructans and the glycoligosaccharides and polyols are actually prebiotics. So that's one of the reasons you want to bring them back in.
Right.
But yes, you said strategically.
Strategically,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think a good thing to just reiterate is many experts all agree that if you do any kind of elimination to try to heal a gut issue, the ultimate goal is to get back to as much variety as you can. So I think that's the only trap we get into with these different elimination, whether it's paleo or FODMAP or whatever, is if you feel stuck and that you can't reintroduce these foods.
Yeah, and if you stay in there too long, you're going to maybe permanently eliminate a beneficial microbe that's hard to get it reestablished.
Right.
But along with that, he references one study that low-fat FODMAP diet led to significant declines in several important micronutrients, retinol, thiamine, riboflavin, and calcium. So, you can tolerate that deficiency short-term, but you wouldn't want to go long-term with that. And I think he's confident in what he was saying there. What about fermentables? Do you eat a lot of fermentables?
That is my downfall.
What constitutes a fermentable for those?
Sauerkraut,
Miso.
kombucha.
I don't know about that, but I love sauerkraut.
I do too.
I mean, yogurt, technically.
Oh, really?
Well, it's a it's got live cultures in it.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
guess so,
necessarily
right.
fermented.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The kombucha thing that I read somewhere, and I don't know if it was in this book, if long term, you got to worry about your dental enamel.
Yeah, remember in Glucose Revolution, is that what it's called? Where she said you have to drink the apple cider vinegar through a straw
at the back of your mouth, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of similar with kombucha. It's
think
very
so.
acidic, and it can.
Yeah.
He only recommends 4 ounces of it a day, which I can easily drink a whole bottle.
Really?
Kombucha?
I'm not into that yet.
I have a friend who makes his own.
Do you have the plug? I was just going to ask.
So he does do all that stuff, but I do right now anyway 2 apple cider vinegar gummies at night.
I just as soon drink it or eat it. And that Bragg's, what do they call it? Bragg's vinegar. It's got the mother in it. Mm-hmm. That stuff's good. They say you can put a tablespoon of that in water if you don't have lemon or something. And it sounds awful, but it's got a little bit of a fizz to it, and it's actually not bad. So maybe I would like kombucha if I experimented a little bit more.
But I don't have a taste for the vinegar.
The sour.
Like the pickles and.
Oh,
No,
I
the
love
acidic.
pickles. Now the Romans said you should eat pickles because that's what they gave the gladiators before they went in to fight, and it was to perk them up.
Well,
so
pickle
they could
juice
go kill somebody.
is like if you are having like cramping and stuff. Pickle juice is if you drink pickle
Old
juice.
wives' tale.
No. I mean, it works.
Works, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Some of those things they told us to do a long time ago do work.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we forget that? Miso, tempeh. I'm just kind of exploring the miso.
Are you?
I bought some of that, and I use it occasionally. So, yeah, what we're finding is in this reading, I'm getting adventurous, although I've always been curious.
Well, if he does tell you how to make even, so he tells you how to ferment things, I think a little bit in both books. Mm-hmm. And he also gets into sprouting in the cookbook a little bit. But I want to point out one thing I like about his book is these little sections that are like popular questions. So what about juicing?
Good one.
Is juice fruit the same as sinking your teeth into the whole food? No, unfortunately it's not. When you process your food, the rules no longer apply. When you juice your fruit, you are removing most of the fiber and artificially concentrating the sugar. For example, 1 small orange has 45 calories, 2.3 grams of fiber, and 9 grams of sugar. 1 cup of orange juice packs 134 calories, just 0.5 grams of fiber, and 23.3 grams of sugar. Mm-hmm. So I see all these like juicing programs out there, but I'm like, you're removing the fiber.
Yeah.
And then he has another little standout thing that I thought was interesting to read with you all. It's, do I take probiotics after I take an antibiotic?
Yeah, that was a little counter to what I understood.
And
Because we're saying that if you take an antibiotic, it's going to knock out your microbes in your gut as well as the pathogens that might be infecting you.
Right, so it would make sense to
Take a prebiotic.
Take a probiotic.
Yeah, and he says
But
no.
he says, actually, a research study that I read changed my mind on that. And that was one of the things I always
But he
appreciate
said
about
to take them, but not right at not while you're getting the antibiotic and not right after it. It was later you could.
Yeah. Well, and he just says food. Food gets prebiotics, fiber from your food, and gently ease back into it after you've taken antibiotics. So lots of little fun questions he answers in the little sidebars.
Yeah. I like the way he's organized the book with that too. Towards the end of this part, he talks about fiber-fueled foods, and I love what he says, inspiring your gut microbes to do the river dance at every meal. And it's like, oh, that's kind of a picture.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's when he brings up his goals, the F goals, which I really felt that was an interesting reminder of what we're trying to do at each meal. Make sure that you're getting that diversity. So do you want to run over that or you want me to? Okay. So the F goals are, F stands for fruit and the fermenteds. Make sure that you have those. Greens as the G, greens and grains. O is the omega-3, and he says you want to get it from plant-based super seeds. And algae, he was not excited about fish-sourced omega-3s, but he's saying you need omega-3s. And I'm still on the fence about the plant sourced. I don't know that you can you get as much from plants as you can get from the fish if it's a sustainably harvested fish grade oil. A is for the aromatics, your onions, your garlics, and things like that. And then L is for the legumes. And S is for the sulforaphanes, they're Brussels sprouts and other cruciferous vegetables. So if you have your F goals, that gets you the whole spectrum of the plant diversity that you're looking for.
Nice.
I like that too. And it's easy to remember.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I think something that we both appreciate, Eleanor, we like the wellness wheel, and we like to incorporate all kinds of wellness. So he does talk about engage in mindful eating. He talks about putting your phone away, sitting down at an actual table. It's not what you eat, but when you eat that matters. So synchronizing with your natural rhythms. He talks about how sleep is powerfully restorative. We've read so much and talked so much about sleep, but I'm not sure that we focused on sleep in the gut.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very restorative for our gut. He talks about getting out and reconnecting with nature, regular exercise contributing to gut health, human connection, and stress management. So he really has that well-rounded approach there.
I think so too. And did you look at the way his 4-week plan lays out? Because he has a little checklist, and I went down the checklist of, what you need to have in your kitchen to be able to do this. And I think I may be unusual. I probably have every kitchen gadget anybody could ever think of, and I love them.
Nice.
I keep looking for new ones because I have fun. Like I said, I enjoy my kitchen.
Yeah.
But he has the equipment and then the foods just to have on stock so you can reach for it. Now, I don't have, and I probably should, garam masala. I think you can mix that up yourself.
I have a bottle of it at
I know,
home,
yeah, I think it's a good one, and I don't have that. And I will say I just did a pantry takeover with my wellness community where we threw away expired things. Oh, God, my
You spring cleaned your pantry.
my spices were like, I had some from 1979. I had some from 2000. And I said, I know spices retain their stuff, but I thought, you know what? I'm tossing them and getting some fresh.
Yeah, they don't.
I didn't toss them all. But
Well, here's the thing, though. If you hadn't used all of it by 1979, you
don't
probably
want it.
didn't need it anyway.
Exactly.
So just keep it with the ones that you use
Yes.
the most. And And I have realized that I am a home cook. I do it often, and I do it for therapy. I do it for just entertainment value for myself and my wife. But I have noticed that there are basically, I like to have a whole bunch of stuff just in case, but basically I use the same stuff over and over and over again. And actually, using the big thing of garlic powder, I'm going to have to replace that because I use so much of it. Plus, I make the SPG salt pepper garlic for like seasoning for like hamburgers and stuff. So,
yeah,
not plant based, but they eat plants.
I was doing some smoothie workshops with people, so I went down to Sam's and bought the large cinnamon and the large clove and the large paprika and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm not ever doing that again because a household. If you have a restaurant, you can use it in that quantity.
Right.
So I've from this experience, I decided, all right, I'm only buying the little teeny ones, and when they run out, I'll go get another one. But since I told you about the sushi, well, it called for wasabi powder. Well, I wanted some wasabi powder for the dip that you dip them in. Oh, it's so good. But that was a new spice for my cabinet, and Kathy Krotz gave me some mushroom powder that I haven't figured out what to do with yet, but I know I'm going to. So I'm collecting some new things in there that are out of my typical thing. And so anyway, he has a really good list of the variety of things to reach for so that you don't get in the middle of a recipe and say, I got to go to the store. I don't have that. And then he recommends a Sunday prep day or any day that you pick. But he says if you do some prepping, and I do think that is good advice for all of us because if we don't have something prepped, we're going to reach for something that's not the best choice and maybe regret it. And don't stock things in your kitchen that you know are probably, like, do you really need the potato chips in your kitchen? You can get them out at a restaurant. If they're going to be served, that might be the time you could eat those because they're really probably not very good for you. Even though we said potatoes are okay, I'm not sure a potato chip is that
Make them
nutritious.
at home like I do.
How do you slice them?
I have a mandolin.
I do too. You saw my thumb, right?
I have a Pampered Chef mandolin, so I put it in there and just chuck, and it gets some paper thin.
Okay, there's a reference to Pampered Chef. Okay. All right, then drinks and snacks and quick fix recipes so that you always have something to get. And then he goes down what you need in your cupboard, tahini and dates, tempeh, almonds, blah, blah, blah. It's a pretty comprehensive list, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And helps you get started on that. And then he talks about these points, how many plant points you can earn. And he calls you a wimp if you don't have 150. Anyway, so he has some fun with it. And I think it is entertaining and well organized. And if you could follow it, I think you get some benefits. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's a good person to know, to learn from. If his 28 plan, it doesn't make sense for his slow and steady increase of fiber. So I imagine, if you're completely healthy and you just want to be healthier, then the fiber fueled would be good. But to his point earlier, like if you do have some gut health issues, you might want to
wait before you start that.
Wait, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. If it encourages you to count your points, I'm all in because at Well Balanced Nutrition, we love fruits and veggies and the power of those. So I love the overall message. Increase your plant variety. Just eat more plants.
Yeah. And Michael Pollan wrote that book, Eat More Plants.
Did he?
Yeah. He has written some Omnivore's Dilemma.
Yeah.
And then one of his more recent ones, it's probably 10 years old now, is Eat More Plants. So this idea of plant slant, we're hearing it from lots of corners now.
Yeah, we are. Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens to our health. Maybe we'll all get healthier. And that would not be a bad outcome. So I've enjoyed talking about fiber fueled with you, Kristen.
Same here, and I'm inspired to go eat a bit more variety now.
Let's do it.
The Health Geeks Book Club podcast is part of the Less Desirables podcast network, where you can listen to our podcasts as well as the Less Desirables Fan Interference, The Man Who Ate the Town, Beeswax Vinyl Daily, Wheeler's Dog, I Remember Now, the Queensryche Podcast, the Asylum Podcast, and even more are on the way. You can listen to our podcasts on our website or any podcatcher of your choice like Apple or Spotify, basically anywhere you find podcasts, and of course on the TLD Network page, tldpodnetwork.com. Find out all you need to know about all the TLD Network shows right there, tldpodnetwork.com. We are recording this podcast in the Omniverus studios here in downtown Winston-Salem. Check out Omniverus.com for any of your commercial or residential general contractor needs. If you have something to say to us or want to participate in our discussion, send an email to comments@healthgeekspodcast.com, send a message via our social media accounts, or best yet, call and leave us a voicemail on the TLD Network Hotline, 336-422-6862. We will play your voicemail on the air. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.